Hi, my name is Dr. John Douillard and welcome to LifeSpa.com. And today I want to talk about the really interesting connection between bone health and your longevity. What's interesting also is that cultures that are modernized and urbanized, they have the highest rates of bone density issues, where developing countries, third world countries, they have much less osteoporosis. Now that's changing because the diets are also changing in these third world countries as well. Now, for decades, they thought it was a calcium deficiency. And there are, in fact, 4 deficiencies that are directly linked to bone density and age-related issues that I want to talk about. But calcium isn't one of them. Turns out that the cultures that eat the most amount of dairy and get the most amount of calcium have the most amount of osteoporosis, right? So it wasn't dairy after all. But there are 4 deficiencies that I want to talk about that more commonly impact folks that live in a modern culture and with a modern lifestyle. So the first one is vitamin D. Vitamin D comes from the sun, and it doesn't matter if you get your vitamin D from the sun or from a supplement or from organ meats. The vitamin D's job is to take calcium out of your intestinal tract and deliver it into the bloodstream. But before it can do that, the vitamin D has to become activated. So it has to go to your liver, and it then goes from pre-vitamin D to something called calcidiol, and then it goes to your kidneys and it becomes something called calcitriol. That's the active form of vitamin D. And it turns out that doesn't happen unless you have ample amount of magnesium, the second deficiency we want to talk about today. And one study showed that the 65% of adults in America are deficient in magnesium, which is a really critical issue, right? So the magnesium is important to create the active vitamin D. Then the vitamin D can take the calcium into the bloodstream, but then the calcium has a choice. Do I go into the arteries and create calcium-related arterial plaque, or do I go to the bones and support bone density? Obviously, calcium is really important for the bones, which is why they thought it was really that simple. You don't have enough calcium, therefore that's why you have bone density issues. That turns out not to be the case, right? So what is it that is a deficiency that would affect whether the calcium goes to your bone or to your arteries and does damage? Well, there's a deficiency of what's called vitamin K, and one study showed 97% are either deficient or insufficient in vitamin K. And vitamin K has what are called matrix GLA proteins that take the calcium away from your arteries and into your bones. And it's really important that we get enough of that. Otherwise, it's directly linked to compromised bone density issues. And of course, it's related to aging. So that's really important. So let's talk about longevity for a second. In studies with longevity, there was studies that showed there was like 56 different trials, placebo-based trials that showed that vitamin D actually on its own, by itself, supported healthy bone density issues. Another study where they actually took vitamin D and magnesium together, and they found that when they did the 2 of those, there was a significant boost in longevity. When they actually took vitamin K2 and vitamin D together in a group of adults that were around 70 years old on average, it reduced the death rate by 68%. So there's all this science that shows that it's quite significant for us to get the combination of vitamin D and magnesium and vitamin K2 as well. Vitamin K2 is really important. In one study with 4,800 adults, they found that it actually significantly reduced the group that had the highest rate of the component of vitamin K called MK7, and MK7 is the component of vitamin K2 that lasts the longest in your blood. And the folks who had more of that had a significant reduction in mortality. It's called all-cause mortality, which means that no matter how you die, it actually protected you from death and increase your longevity in that regard. And that was another study which I thought was even more interesting, was that that it was with over 16,000 women. They found that when folks were that for every that there was a 9% decreased risk in cardiovascular disease for every 10 micrograms of vitamin K2 that were given. Now, the average dose of vitamin K2, and you should always look for the MK7 component that's in your vitamin K, is about like our K2 max has 45 micrograms per capsule. You take 2 of those per day. That's about 81, about 90 per day. So if you look at that average, that decreases your risk of cardiovascular disease by a whopping 80% plus. So that's pretty interesting research, is that the vitamin K2 on its own protects longevity, and on its own it protects you from cardiovascular disease. The vitamin D on its own will actually protect you from age-related concerns and increase your longevity. Vitamin K2 will do it, and of course magnesium has been shown to boost longevity on its own as well as being the activator of the actual vitamin D. So, but when you put all those three together, you have a really powerful effect on your bone density. But I did say that and your longevity. But I did say that there were actually 4 deficiencies that I wanted to talk about, and the last one is melatonin. So melatonin has been shown. I did a podcast with a melatonin researcher, Paulette Enterby, and she did research, and she talks about it in my podcast. You get that at LifeSpa.com. And she talks about the benefits of melatonin for osteoporosis. She actually did studies with dosages between 3 and 5 milligrams of melatonin that actually were shown to protect against osteoporosis and reverse osteoporosis. So pretty strong statement to be able to say something like melatonin, which is an over-the-counter thing, can actually reverse osteoporosis, but actually the science is in, and it's really important. Melatonin's also been shown to be a powerful longevity agent. Melatonin, we always think it's just a sleep drug hormone. It's not really that. It's a molecule, 3 billion years old, that connects your biological clocks with nature's circadian rhythms and keep you in sync. And that, in fact, is Nobel Prize winning science, which is really important. So it's a circadian reset for us. And the studies on longevity are profound. It's been shown to be a powerful free radical scavenger, obviously supports your sleep, increases cognitive function, balances blood sugar, helps to protect against cardiovascular disease. It supports metabolic health, which is your high blood pressure, your cholesterol, LDLs, all those kind of things. Powerful anti-anxiety agent, powerful antiviral and antimicrobial and immune booster. They gave Donald Trump melatonin when he had COVID. It obviously supports bone density, and of course it's something that is going to reset your circadian rhythms and getting your biological clocks in sync with nature's circadian rhythms. It creates a powerful ease of life, so you're going in rhythm as opposed to always being tired or hungry, always at the wrong time. So some dosages that might help you kind of wrap this up. Vitamin D, I always suggest you get a sheep lanolin vitamin D. It absorbs easier, nobody has to die, and it's much easier to absorb and optimize the vitamin D better than the fish oil vitamin D. A lot of folks have liver and gallbladder and fat metabolism issues, and vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. So a lot of people just don't do very well with vitamin D, and they just can't get the numbers up. The normal range is 30 to 100 nanograms per milliliter. That's the range that you want to be in. But the studies show that if you're over 50 nanograms per milliliter, between 50 and 80, still within the normal range, but you're in the high end, the vitamin D starts functioning like a corticosteroid hormone, which is a steroid hormone. So it starts doing something above and beyond what vitamins do, starts doing this hormonal thing, which is really quite powerful. So you want to have that. And you think about our history. We didn't have houses. We didn't have cars. We were always in the sun. We always had optimal levels of vitamin D. And in the winter, we did eat organ meats, so we had the benefit there. So I usually say in the winter, 4,000 to 5,000 international units per day. and then in the summer 1 to 2, depending on how much sun you get. But always get your vitamin D tested and shoot for between 50 to 80 and try to find out what dose works for you as an individual. That's really important. Magnesium, I'm a big fan of around 1 to 200 milligrams per day. I don't think we need to be clobbering ourselves with minerals, but mineral deficiencies are a major issue. Our soils are depleted and almost everybody has a mineral deficiency. If you have a magnesium deficiency, which is 65% of the population, you absolutely probably have another mineral deficiency as well. And there is no magnesium tree that you can just go pick the magnesium fruit and eat it. So and minerals always come into the body in general in a cascade, in a soup of many minerals at the same time. And I'm a big fan of a multi-mineral supplement that you would get all the minerals at the same time and have them with your food so it comes in with your food. And we use chelated minerals from a company called Albion, which has been studied to be the highest absorption rate, and that's our essential mineral product. And I always suggest taking, initially take 2 a day for a month or two to see if you build up any deficiency, reverse any deficiency that you might have. And then you can get down to 1 a day and even 1 every 2 or 3 days. Just baseline support is all you need. You don't have to have these massive amounts of pills all day long, but I do think it's important because our foods are deficient. It's just the nature of, it's just the way it is, and we have to mitigate because minerals are so critical for all those enzymatic processes. Vitamin K2, like I said, you want to always get the MK7 support, and I'm a big fan. Ours is 45 micrograms per capsule, and taking 2 of those per day is ideal. And then the last, of course, is melatonin. In Dr. Paula Witt-Enterby's study, she did 3 to 5 milligrams per day to actually reverse osteoporosis. And that dose, we have something called melatonin HP, which gives you, it's a 5 milligram, but it gives you 3 milligrams time release throughout the entire night. It's really great for those dosages that are a little on the higher side, which is more the medicinal dose. Science has shown that around 3 to 5 milligrams is what most of the studies have been done on with melatonin to have all the benefits that I mentioned a minute ago. But in addition, there is a lot of new emerging research on what's called low-dose melatonin. So if you're just looking to hack the aging process, then low-dose melatonin is something, we have something called low dose where 1 drop is 0.1 milligram. And you would take 1 drop per 5 nights and then go to 2 drops for 5 nights and go to 3 drops for 5 nights. And you keep increasing until you get the optimal dose. Once you get to the optimal dose and you have a good night's sleep and you're rested and you wake up feeling refreshed, then you can stay on that dose. Now, according to Dr. Enterby, melatonin will actually not suppress your own production, which sort of makes it not an official hormone because hormones do that. What melatonin does, it encourages your natural production. So when you take low dose melatonin, you get to say 0.5 milligrams, 5 drops of that, you're going to reach a dose where it's going to start to encourage your natural production plus what you're taking. And as your body resets its natural rhythms, you may not need as much. And sometimes if you get more than you need, the melatonin starts to not work. So a lot of people say, oh, I tried melatonin and it worked for a while and it stopped working. But that's probably because you were taking more than you needed, and instead of taking more, which is sort of the American way, we should have taken less. So go from 5 drops to 4 drops to 3 drops to 2 drops to 1 drop. And a lot of my patients find that they have great sleep, they feel great between 1 and 2 to 3 drops, 0.1 to 0.3 milligrams per day. That's a dose you can't even buy in the local health food store because it's so small. So that's one way to do it, but that's for hacking the aging process. If you're looking to reverse a condition, then the research shows that melatonin can be used at higher doses between 3 to 5, particularly in this case, like a bone density issue. So there you have it. You have 4 deficiencies that are commonly deficient in westernized cultures, which is melatonin because of light pollution, vitamin D because we're inside working in our offices all the time, vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 comes from fermented dairy, and everybody in the westernized cultures has kind of said dairy is bad for you, so nobody eats dairy anymore. So you don't get the MK7, which is the optimal form of vitamin K2, and that you get from fermented dairy. sort of interesting, right? That nature said, hey, if you're going to eat a lot of dairy, I'm going to give you a lot of MK7 vitamin K to make sure that calcium doesn't go to your arteries and create problems. It goes right to your bones and creates bone density, right? So that's kind of really neat. And then finally, the magnesium. And magnesium is a deficiency that comes from a lack of our soil, which is caused by, depleted soils, which is caused by modern cultures and modern society. So that, there's probably much more to this, to the understanding the puzzle of osteoporosis and longevity. But these are 4 deficiencies that are well documented to actually relate to both your bone density as well as your longevity. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. John Douillard, and don't forget to check out this article at LifeSpa.com. It's pretty comprehensive, lots of research cited there, so you can really look at the science if you like. Okay, thanks for listening. Talk to you next week. Do you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe and share.
This recording is brought to you by LifeSpa, where ancient Ayurvedic wisdom meets modern science. Get access to free health video newsletters by Dr. John at LifeSpa.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.